Roger Federer just did something nobody saw coming. A private jet. A quiet invitation. A gesture so unexpected it sent shockwaves through the tennis world. And Alex Eala had no idea it was happening. What began as a routine stretch of the season suddenly turned into a defining moment, not about luxury, not about celebrity optics, but about recognition. Respect. Mentorship. This wasn't a publicity stunt. This was a legend reaching back to lift the next generation. But the real question is, why her? Why now? And what does this mean for the future of women's tennis? For years, Eala wasn't a headline. She was simply the girl from Manila with a dream bigger than her geography. She didn't grow up inside the European academy system. She didn't have built-in sponsorship pipelines. Her family made enormous sacrifices, relocating, chasing training opportunities, betting everything on belief. At just 14 years old, she earned a place at the Rafa Nadal Academy in Spain. That alone was historic. Very few young Asian players receive that kind of elite immersion. But Eala didn't go there to experience tennis. She went there to conquer it. In 2020, she became the first Filipino to win a junior Grand Slam singles title at the Australian Open Girls Championship. The Philippines erupted. A nation that had long searched for a global tennis icon suddenly had one. But junior glory is only the beginning. The professional tour is unforgiving. When you transition to the WTA level, nobody cares about your junior trophies. You start over. Ranking points become survival currency. Sponsorships depend on results. Every match feels like an audition. Eala felt that reality immediately. Grinding ITF events. Playing qualifiers. Battling injuries. Learning that raw talent without physical resilience and tactical maturity doesn't last. Still, she climbed. By 2023, she cracked the top 200. By 2024, she was pressing toward the top 150. Her serve stabilized. Her rally tolerance deepened. Her composure hardened. But she was still missing one catalytic moment. The kind of moment that changes how the entire sport sees you. What she didn't realize was that someone had been paying attention. Someone who understands pressure at a cellular level. Someone who knows what it means to carry expectations across continents. Someone who built a career not just on trophies, but on elegance, humility, and stewardship. Federer's retirement in 2022 ended an era on court. It didn't end his influence. He has always looked beyond himself, mentoring young players, investing in development, supporting talent quietly rather than loudly. And sometimes, the most powerful statements aren't made in press conferences. They're made in private invitations. A flight. A conversation. A gesture that says, "I see you." For a rising player like Eala, that kind of validation isn't just symbolic. It's transformative. Because when one of the greatest champions in history acknowledges your path, the narrative shifts. You're no longer promising. You're chosen. And in a sport driven by belief as much as ability, that might be the most powerful boost of all. She reminded him of something familiar. The hunger. The quiet discipline. The refusal to complain. To Roger Federer, Alex Eala wasn't just another prospect. She was a player from an underrepresented region fighting uphill without the structural advantages others take for granted. And that mattered. Federer has never been the loudest figure in tennis. His influence doesn't come from viral moments or dramatic press conferences. It comes from presence. From action. From the way he moves quietly and changes lives without needing applause. Over the years, he has funded development programs through the Roger Federer Foundation, mentored rising stars like Dominic Thiem and Grigor Dimitrov, and supported young players who needed guidance more than headlines. But Federer has always been selective. He looks for something specific: talent paired with humility. Work ethic paired with perspective. Players who remind him of the fragile early years of his own journey. In early 2025, whispers started circulating around tour events. Federer had been seen backstage at multiple tournaments, not posing for cameras, but observing practice courts. Asking quiet questions. Studying body language. Most people assumed he was staying connected to the sport he loves. But insiders began noticing a pattern. One name kept surfacing in those private conversations. Alexandra Eala. Federer had reportedly followed her for over a year, from her junior breakthrough at the Australian Open to the grinding reality of the professional tour. He saw her resilience when rankings dipped. He saw her composure when matches slipped away. And he saw something bigger. A player representing Southeast Asia on a stage that has historically been dominated by Europe and the United States. Federer has long spoken about tennis as a truly global sport. Growth in Asia, Africa, South America, not just tradition, but expansion. Eala symbolized that expansion. Supporting her wasn't just mentorship. It was investment in the future of the game. Then came late January 2025. Federer reached out directly to her management team. The message was simple and stunning. He wanted to mentor her personally for a week. Access to his training insights. Access to his professional network. Strategic guidance on navigating the leap from prospect to contender. This wasn't a sponsorship pitch. This was time. And time is the rarest commodity in elite tennis. Her team was speechless. A 20-time Grand Slam champion offering hands-on mentorship to a player still fighting to secure a permanent spot inside the top 100? Unprecedented. But that wasn't the shock. That was just the beginning. February 10, 2025. Dubai. Eala was preparing for a routine WTA 250 week. Practice sessions. Recovery work. Quiet focus. Ranking points on her mind. The mentorship plans had been kept quiet to avoid distraction. Then her coach approached her after morning practice. Roger Federer wanted to see her. Immediately. At the airport. She thought it was a prank. Federer was supposed to be in Switzerland. Why would he be in Dubai? And why an airport meeting? Her coach didn't say much. He simply handed her a boarding pass. Not economy. Not business. Not even a commercial airline. A private terminal. And suddenly, what was supposed to be an ordinary tournament week turned into something cinematic. Because this wasn't just a meeting. It was a statement. And what happened next would leave Eala in tears, and the entire WTA community scrambling to understand what it meant. It wasn't a commercial ticket. It wasn't business class. It was a private jet. Roger Federer's private jet. The plan sounded unreal. Federer would personally fly Alexandra Eala to Switzerland. 4 days. His training base. His coaching circle. Deep, uninterrupted conversations about her future. The jet was arranged. The accommodations handled. The training blocks scheduled. Even the nutrition plan prepared. All she had to do was say yes. She stood there staring at the boarding pass, trying to process it. This was the same man whose posters hung on her wall as a child. The champion she studied frame by frame while learning her backhand timing. And now he was sending a jet to pick her up. It felt impossible. Later, she would write on Instagram, "I've dreamed of meeting my heroes. I never imagined one of them would go this far to believe in me. I don't have the words, just gratitude and a promise to make this mean something." Hours later, she was airborne over the Arabian Gulf, heading toward Europe. The interior wasn't flashy. It was understated. Elegant. Quiet luxury. Exactly what you'd expect from Federer, never loud, always precise. She spent the flight texting her parents, calling family members, trying to explain what was happening while barely believing it herself. When the jet touched down in Zurich, he was there. Not an assistant. Not a representative. Federer himself. He greeted her with a smile and just 4 words, "Let's get to work." The next few days felt surreal. Serve placement drills. Footwork refinement. Film breakdown sessions. Private strategic conversations. Photos surfaced of them side by side on the practice court. Federer demonstrating movement patterns. Eala listening intensely during tactical discussions with elite coaches. This wasn't a publicity stunt. There were no flashy press conferences. It was mentorship, quiet, deliberate, intentional. And when the news broke, the reaction was explosive. The tennis world rarely gets surprised. It runs on routine and predictable cycles. But this disrupted the script. Players began reacting publicly. Coco Gauff praised the gesture as what true legends do, lifting the next generation. Aryna Sabalenka posted about belief when the GOAT backs you. Even Serena Williams quietly engaged with posts celebrating the mentorship, subtle but powerful. Of course, not every voice was purely celebratory. Some questioned the optics. Why Eala? Why not another rising player? Would this create unfair expectations? Would she now perform under a microscope? One anonymous coach put it bluntly, support like this is a gift, but it's also pressure. And pressure changes everything. In the Philippines, the reaction was emotional. Hashtags trended nationwide. News outlets ran primetime features. The Philippine Sports Commission publicly praised Federer for recognizing Filipino talent on a global stage. But the most powerful moment came from her father. In a tearful interview, he spoke about sacrifice, relocating, budgeting, betting on belief when outcomes were uncertain. Hearing that someone like Federer believed in his daughter the way they did felt like validation beyond trophies. Behind the scenes, the WTA Tour reportedly held discussions. Individual mentorship is inspiring, but it also highlights structural gaps. Why must players from non-traditional tennis nations rely on retired legends for elite access? Still, the overwhelming sentiment was clear: this wasn't about branding. It was about impact. Because when you strip away the jet and the headlines, here's what remains: Federer didn't just give Eala a flight. He gave her legitimacy. He gave her proximity to excellence. He gave her access. In professional tennis, access is oxygen. Players from traditional powerhouses grow up inside built-in ecosystems, elite academies, sponsor pipelines, consistent exposure to top-tier competition. For someone from Southeast Asia, the climb is steeper. This mentorship doesn't guarantee Grand Slam titles. But it compresses years of learning into days. It expands networks. It changes how agents, sponsors, and tournament directors view you. And most importantly, it changes how you view yourself. Because when one of the greatest players in history chooses you, it does something psychological. It says, you belong here. And sometimes, belonging is the difference between potential and legacy. Players like Alexandra Eala don't have the luxury most elite tennis players take for granted. She had to carve her own path, relying on scholarships, small sponsorships, and the unwavering support of her family. Breaking into the top 150 was monumental. Breaking into the top 50? That requires an entirely different level of support, resources, connections, and opportunities most players outside the traditional tennis powerhouses simply don't have. Federer just gave her all of that. The 4 days in Switzerland weren't just hitting balls. She trained with biomechanical specialists who have worked with Grand Slam champions. She sat in on strategy sessions with veteran coaches. She practiced alongside players competing at the highest level. And she had hours of candid discussions with Federer himself about mental toughness, handling pressure, and navigating the isolation of the professional tour. More importantly, she now carries Federer's endorsement. In tennis, that is currency. Sponsors take notice. Tournament directors take notice. Fellow players take notice. When Roger Federer invests in you, the world listens. But there's a deeper layer here. Federer's gesture sends a clear message to the sport: we need to do better. Tennis still struggles with diversity. Players from Asia, Africa, and South America often face barriers, not because of talent, but due to lack of resources. Federer's support challenges the tennis establishment. If a retired legend can make this kind of impact, why can't institutions, Grand Slams, or major sponsors? Tennis can be a truly global sport, and it starts by investing in players like Eala, not as charity, but as the future of the game. For Eala, the stakes are immense. She no longer represents just herself or the Philippines. She carries the hopes of every overlooked player from a non-traditional tennis nation. That's a heavy burden, but if anyone can carry it, it's someone who has defied expectations her entire life. In a recent interview, Eala was asked how she plans to honor Federer's belief. She didn't speak of rankings or trophies. She said, "I want to inspire the next generation the way Roger inspired me. I want kids in the Philippines, in Southeast Asia, everywhere to see that dreams don't have borders." And that's the essence of this story. Federer retired in 2022, but his legacy is evolving. Most athletes are remembered for titles, records, and iconic moments. Federer shows us that true legacy is defined by what you leave behind. Supporting Eala isn't transactional. He isn't her coach, sponsor, or taking a cut of her earnings. He simply saw potential and acted. In a sport dominated by contracts, branding, and numbers, this kind of pure mentorship is rare. But it also exposes a challenge. If one retired player can create this opportunity, why aren't institutions doing more? WTA programs exist, but access is limited. Grand Slams generate billions, yet support for rising players outside the top 100 is scarce. Federer's intervention is a mirror, showing what's possible when belief is paired with action. For Eala, the journey has only just begun. The private jet was the headline. The real work starts now. She has to perform, prove that Federer's belief wasn't misplaced, and carry immense expectations without letting them crush her. If her career has taught us anything, it's that she thrives when underestimated. She's spent her life proving people wrong. Now, with one of the greatest players of all time in her corner, the world is watching, not just to see if she succeeds, but to see what happens when a legend redefines mentorship. This isn't just about Alex Eala. It's about the future of tennis, the culture of mentorship, and whether the sport will follow Federer's lead. Roger Federer's private jet surprise wasn't about headlines. It was about belief in Eala, in the next generation, and in a tennis world that can do better. What happens next depends on her, and on the tennis world deciding if they'll rise to meet this example. One thing is certain, this moment will be remembered long after the rankings change.